All right, everyone, welcome back to Serve, presented by Chase. JW, let's take a little bit of a deeper dive into the 2 weeks of the women's event. I think the overriding storyline, start to finish, the only consistent talking point that made sense the entire time was actually because of the inconsistencies presented by the field on this surface. Going in, listen, we had a dumpster fire of draws, as I think did most people. Not a lot of people had Krejcikova and Paulini, who had never won a grass court match before the season, in the final. What we did say was, I think this is the most wide open draw that I've ever seen on the women's side, based on surface, based on who was playing well, based on injuries, and based on the most dominant player in the world not liking this surface in Iga Swiatek. So, we had the thought process right and the guessing wrong. But as you kind of work through the storylines of the last 2 weeks on the women's side, what stands out?
I think we have this bias. We really sort of dislike parity, and we like a cluster at the top, right? We like when there's excellence. We like the big three. It's fun storylines, but basically we don't really like any given Sunday in sports, right? We like a clear, and we sort of we were anointing this big four in women's tennis. These four players at the top of the heap, they've really distanced themselves from the rest of the pack. There's a long staircase down after these big four players. And what happened? We come here to grass, and Iga, who's been dominating the sport, she's fresh from this triumph yet again at Roland Garros. It's just the year she finally solves the grass riddle. No, it is not. She not only lost to Putin-Seva, but really retreated. This was like you ever see the Homer Simpson meme when he sort of backs into the bush? I mean, this wasn't just a loss. This was like a capitulation to Putin-Seva.
Who, by the way, had won a grass court event coming in.
Right. But she did not build on that. And again, if you're going to go down in 3 sets to Sabalenka in the semis, that's fine. But this was not a good tournament for Iga. It wasn't a good tournament for Sabalenka. She did not post. Rybakina, I would say not. She got through the first 5 rounds, which is something she hasn't always done. Her body held up, but she retreated a bit against Krejcikova in the semis. That was a match she probably should have won on paper. She was everyone's favorite after the quarters, and she couldn't close. Coco had her issues too. That forehand really got picked on by Emma Navarro. And then, I think you sort of look at this big picture, and suddenly it's been 2 years since Rybakina has been on the board. Iga has one major out. She's great on clay, right? I mean, just she's headed toward Chrissy, if not Rafa numbers on clay. But outside of clay, she's only won one major, and she sure hasn't done much damage here at this pinnacle event. And again, not a great event for Coco after a promising first week. And suddenly you're left with, wait a second, Barbara Krejcikova has now won 2 majors. Well, that's as many as Sabalenka. That's more than Rybakina and Coco. And oh yeah, she's also won as many off of clay as Iga. So in a very short amount of time, I think we've gone from a big four to a world of parity. We'll see what happens the rest of the season. There were some nice stories tucked into the women's. Emma Navarro was a great revelation. But then she didn't really have much against Paulini. Paulini continued. She was sort of been the story of the year so far on the women's. But she couldn't quite close in the final. And a little bit of the same on the men's side, where, the French kids, we had a couple of nice players making nice showings, but not really leaving their mark on the tournament. But I think on the women's side, I don't know. I mean, should we call this a one-off, and grass is a fluky surface and it gets even more fluky with injuries and rain? Or is the WTA not quite as stratified as we think it is? And this big four we've all been pushing really isn't quite as big as perhaps we would all like it to be.
Yeah, it seems like we all just need very strict guidelines. Like, it's the big four, so we should only deal with these 4. Like that happened. The moment in history we had the big 3, and now all of a sudden I feel like we need to assign big to whoever's playing well, and then argue about who's not in it. A couple of things that made this, I think, into a super fluky event. One, I think the field from 5 to 30, 30 in the rankings, or Krejcikova at 31. There are a lot of players. There's 10, 12 that are very fluent on this surface, where they say, okay, this is probably my favorite surface. I'm thinking, Ostapenko. I'm thinking, Krejcikova, obviously very fluent. Raducanu likes this surface maybe more than any other surface, even including Vekic, the same thing. So I think it's a combination. I also think your odds-on favorite, just based on game and form, pulls out on Saturday before the tournament, talks about a shoulder injury late on a Friday, basically to make us understand how serious it is. Saturday pulls out. That blows open the field as well. Someone fills her spot, but the draw is already kind of messed up a little bit. Rybakina is there, and it's weird. Whenever anyone kind of shifted into that favorite, once Swiatek loses, Sabalenka's out, all of a sudden we're going, well, don't bet against Coco. Here she comes. Navarro beats her, and then we're going, okay, Navarro, and then Navarro loses 1 and 2. So it's just like it was bananas trying to base anything on form, on record. Couple of variables with that. One, shortened grass court season makes it really hard to decipher who's real and who's not based on form coming into the surface. Another thing that's like not talked about enough, when you get fluky results, they basically played 2 different tournaments in this event. The first week was an indoor tournament for a lot of the showcase matches. Very different. Ball striker's paradise. Ball comes down, does it, and then all of a sudden you throw in a little bit of air, a little bit of wind. The movement becomes different. It's a lot more. It's slipperier when you're inside. So it's basically playing 2 completely different surface types: the indoor grass versus the outdoor grass. Navarro plays against Coco, and it's very different than when you walk outside. It just is. That's the way it works. Rybakina, the same thing. All of a sudden, it's the heat of the day, and Krejcikova's serve is getting through a little bit easier. And she's having to move and get exposed, and it's a little bit quicker. The ball flies off the racket a little bit more. So I think this was like the perfect scenario for chaos on this side of the draw. And I guess it takes someone like a Krejcikova, who is this known entity, is not going to get freaked out by being the round of 16 quarters semis final of a Grand Slam, has been there before. At scale, I still think the top 4, the big 4, the best players are still the best players. And they will be consistently week in and week out. You don't have to be better than someone all the time. You have to be better for someone in pockets. And Krejcikova has proven that she can do that when she finds form, and that she is dangerous, and that her game is complete. You're not going to put Krejcikova on any surface and she's going to go, I have no idea what to do on this surface. I was on clay. I'm going, I have to make 17 adjustments to this surface. She can adjust, but she has the ability, the well-rounded game to adjust easier. So shocking, kind of. And then also you're going, yeah, duh. Obviously the person who can deal with different scenarios, different types of surfaces, different players in a world full of chaos is going to be measured and successful.
Quick Krejcikova story. So last year Vondrousova wins and gets this Wimbledon tattoo to celebrate. And sort of half jokingly, Krejcikova came here after she won the title. I said, hey, listen, last year another Czech won and she got a tattoo. Where's your tattoo going? And you would have thought I'd said, what time does, the blood drinking ritual begin? Like, it was the craziest question, like inconceivable. She had this look on her face, like, what the hell? And then she said, ha ha ha, I'm much more traditional than that. No tattoo for me. That's not my personality. And I'm thinking, like, actually, she kind of revealed something right there, with respect to her tennis, which is she's not going to get too high. She's not going to get too low. She's not wild out there. She keeps things in a pretty condensed, compressed zone. And that's good enough to win you majors. So if you can, hit the ball the way she has and has that kind of variety that she has, and she can come to the net, but if she also has that kind of temperament, you don't usually think of tattoo as like a barometer of athletic success, one way or the other. But I think the fact that she's as measured as she is in this era, that's actually a real virtue and asset, and not the reason why she has 2 majors, but I think it's a component.
Yeah, a beautiful storyline too with her. Not beautiful, obviously a painful, but a beautiful tribute to Yana Novotná and the work that she put in with Barbara Krejcikova. Obviously an important event for Yana. I remember watching in '94 when it got away from her. I remember watching in '98 when she finally delivered that victory, and that was very emotional. I know Krejcikova has been effusive, as she should be, to the supports and the lessons that Novotná has given her. So hopefully she is looking down and proud of what she was a part of. Other thing, Krejcikova's, and I never want this to be undersold, ever, Krejcikova's journey was probably going to end in Newport at the Hall of Fame. It will end in Newport in the Hall of Fame. someday when she's done. Obviously, 2 majors, career high ranking number 2, a bunch of doubles titles, right? Grand Slam, she's won Wimbledon twice in doubles. Those factors lead up to a Hall of Fame resume. So let me be the first to congratulate you on getting into the Hall of Fame, because I truly, with all of my soul, believe that will happen. You asked the question, is it the big 4 still that we're focused on? Is there a level of parity that for the rest of the year will extend down the rankings to number 30 for contenders? How do you see it playing out specifically on the WTA Tour towards the end of the year, JW?
Let's table the Olympics, and let's see. The U.S. Open is our next big test, and some of this is about health. Will Sabalenka, who desperately wanted to play here and just couldn't, will she be healthy? Remember, she came within a few games of winning the U.S. Open. It's a big deal if she is or isn't in the tournament. Coco is defending the title. At times, Coco has looked terrific. Other times, it looks like that forehand is going to create a lot of problems for her. Can Emma Navarro build on the secret's out? The book on her is out. She's legit. How legit? And when the tour comes to the United States and there's a lot more exposure and a lot more pressure and a lot more sort of incentive for her, will that help her game? Can Jasmine Paolini, this is a sentence I did not envision saying a few months ago. Can Jasmine Paolini make her 3rd straight major final? And then can Iga recover from grass? And this was, again, I thought this was a real step back event for her. I don't want to sound too harsh and critical for such a dominant player otherwise, but for someone we were saying, oh, she finally solved the riddle. She has not. Those puzzle pieces are still scattered on the coffee table, but she'll get a chance to win a major she has won before. So I think there are a lot of storylines. There are a lot of players who I think have a chance to, I don't want to say salvage, but is 2024 going to be a successful year or an unsuccessful year? And I think there are a lot of sort of hovers. Jasmine Paolini could quit playing and it's a great year, but she's the exception. For most players, it's been, I mean, the U.S. Open, I think, will have a lot of bearing on whether it's a good year for player X or not a good year.
Listen, we come into Wimbledon, we've talked ad nauseum about the question marks surrounding the women's draw. Is that fun? Is it not? These question marks will persist. How does Coco back up last summer? How does she adjust to the obvious game planning that people are employing against her? Does Sabalenka's shoulder come around? Is Rybakina someone that is a number 1 type player in the world? I tend to think she's still going to win more slams for sure. Iga on hard, the inconsistencies early in some of the slams outside of Roland Garros, if we're nitpicking, which at a certain point you're being discussed against your own shadow, of which she has created a very, very large one. I think for the rest of the year, it's going to be very exciting. I don't know that anyone with any sort of certainty can say this is exactly how it's going to play out, but that's what makes it fun. On the other side of the break, we will talk and take a look backwards at the 2 weeks of the men's draw, talk a little bit more Carlitos, talk a little bit more Joker. We'll be right back after the break. This is Served, presented by Chase.